Good afternoon. I'm being challenged here. We should go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for being here. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the first portion, the board portion of our curriculum council meeting. So can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. I'm going to use Linda's. Okay. So the very first action item we have today is a request of approval for an outdoor classroom in a nature trail at the site of the Marsh Creek Grade Center to instruct grade 6 science curriculum. Just to let the board know and everyone here, this is dependent on some funding, and the first step is to pass it through curriculum council, and then there are facility issues after that. So if we could, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Mulvey and Mrs. McGlynn.
Good afternoon. I'm here today twice on the agenda, so it's very exciting. Never came to before, probably never will again. I took this great class at Boston University a long time ago. It was using the community as an educational resource. So today, I want to talk to you about two really great ideas that we've come up with that will bring in the community, parents, local organizations to give our kids some real hands-on fun activities that we're very excited about. So the first one, we're going to ask you today for permission for the district to let us use the land behind the 6th grade center. Tom Mulvey's going to show you some pictures and give you an idea about what it's all about. We are seeking grant funding for all of this. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that was the last one. Done. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pat understated her role. The foundation was looking for an opportunity to do something really cool in the district, and knowing that the situation that we're in, which is we have this brand new school, we have this land behind us, wouldn't it be a perfect opportunity? Because our thought was we were talking in terms of branding the school to be environmentally aware. Wouldn't it be neat to create some sort of outdoor classroom? And so we went through a number of ideas before I contacted an architect who actually is one of my best buddies from high school. So they did this for free, these renderings. I don't know how much more free work I can get out of them, but the thought originally was to do a wood structure. Some sort of, I called it a shed. We talked to Euclid Township, and they would only give us so much of a footprint. And so one of the thoughts was doing something with recycled materials, having a place where we could keep water testing equipment, microscopes, being fed by solar energy, etc. So they came up with a rendering here. But when I brought them out to the site of the building, and if you haven't been out there, make some time this summer if you could to tour the building, but it's really a nice design. The thought where it was going to be was between two wings of the building, and there's a courtyard. And above the courtyard is this beautiful window in the library that looks over the back of the whole Shimona Creek area and into the Welsh Airs neighborhood. And it's nothing but this beautiful field and retention ponds. A lot of mud right now, but it's going to be really nice when it's done. And there's a hillside that drops off. So when I told them I want this shed back in this courtyard, they were like, oh, this is really going to mess with the feng shui. So they came up with a couple different ideas. Anyway, this is what the interior, some of the stuff would look like. You'd be able to do some growing in there, some recycled water, different kinds of solar energy, just an indoor. And this classroom, the idea of this classroom was to be utilized by every kid in the district, where you could run field trips out here and be able to use it. But what they did was they came up with a conceptual design. There is a hill that goes down the back of the building, and there are retention ponds, as I told you, and so there was a thought that we could really implement a multi-tiered conceptual design, and I'm going to go through those for you. The first thought was, again, when they looked at that back window, they thought, we don't want to put a shed back there, we want to do something neat. And so they wanted to not break up the landscape. And so the thought was That little part right there is sort of almost a solar window, almost a skylight that hides the actual structure itself, which you really can see here. And what the thought was is they would do almost a dugout into the hillside of an indoor classroom. And when I said, yeah, guys, that looks like it's multi-millions of dollars, they said, no, actually, building something like this where you're using block and using the earth is a lot less in construction supplies than building something above ground. So the thought was green roof, you know, you could take those solar panels off, but the thought was behind there is just really the actual grass and the hillside, and it's built into the hillside, and then those glass doors would open out into natural sunlight. Then the thought was, and this actually, I'm going to give credit to Dr. Mussolini on this when we were presenting to the foundation board. So, well, what about an amphitheater? You know, something built right into the hillside. And so the thought was, yeah, we could design something like that. So, again, the thought was we're not going to grow trees, especially old growth trees like that they put in the rendering there. But the thought was we could come up with some sort of amphitheater at the bottom that, you know, again, schools could take field trips out to and see. Then the thought was, okay, what would these kids take field trips out there to see? And we're working with a woman in the community who's looking for some grant funding for us. But the thought also was, in stages, we could build an outdoor learning trail back there. And so if you see, this is the site plan. You see that little funny animal, the narwhal trail to the left, was that there could be stations all along this trail that, you know, where you would have different kinds of things that were important for the environment. You know, beekeeping. I don't think I would do that one. But you know, different kinds of water conservation, growing, etc. All kinds of different little environmental centers that the kids would do along this trail, and then be able to come back to the outdoor classroom and compare the results in the amphitheater, and you could have guest speakers, etc., etc. So what the architects that drew this up said was that any of these features of it, whether it's the amphitheater, the actual classroom itself, the trail, could be built in stages. And that's sort of where we are. So our goal is obviously to have this approved so that we could take a look at land use there and sort of get it approved for land use, and then as a foundation seek the funding for it to figure out how we want to implement this. Do we want to implement stages? Do we want to try, if we raise enough money, can we implement the whole thing? I think it's a very good idea. Questions? Mrs. Simonelli's got that.
Love the idea, love it. Worried about, of course, cost. Once, because obviously you're going to get grant funding to do it, but after it's there, maintenance. And then, you know, which obviously you don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
Just expressing initial thoughts. My other concern that I would want worked into this is how are you going to protect it from outside, you know, people with not district use, because it's, you know, in a kind of public area, would be worried about people coming in and doing things that we wouldn't wish them to do. You know, is there a feasibility to fence it?
Yeah, and I think we'd have to take all those things into consideration. You know, there's simple things that could be implemented that like the amphitheater, I think, will be the simplest thing to do. You wouldn't need to push less dirt around. You know, there's not too much to vandalize, not too much to worry about. Obviously, the classroom is the biggest expense, and obviously we would lock it up, and you know, but we'd have to worry about maintenance for sure.
Linda, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, did you consider maybe partnering with the BBA or talking to them anyway?
And we have talked with some people that have connections, work for them, and you know, the thought was that we're going to have some involvement with them.
Because we have an in our school that works for the BBA.
Yeah.
She's the one.
She's
She's the one, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Everybody knows Connie.
yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. So to the board, can we move this forward as a, I think the concept was to move it forward for curriculum approval of an outdoor classroom dependent on funding. Thank you. And so everybody's charge here is to find sponsors. All right. All right, moving on. We have the next two items are related. They are for a new social studies course. So the first thing we need to do is approve the curriculum, and the second thing we need to do is approve the textbooks, and that comes out of this year's curriculum budget. So I will turn it over to Dr. McNeil.
Thank you, Mrs. Hurd-Simmons. Yes, Ms. Jackson is going to speak to the three texts for the three separate AP social studies courses that we will run in the 14-15 school year. That's economics, world history, and human geography. I laughed because several people said they weren't sure what human geography was and if it were going to run or not. And Sharon, we have how many classes?
We have, right now we have 2 sections at east and 1 section at west.
So we have 3 sections running across the district. So Sharon's just going to share with us the textbook as well as the request for resources. Just know that these resources do come with a launch pad. Sharon will speak to what a launch pad is in connection with the ebook. And I would like to thank Sharon as well as the other curriculum leaders. I don't know that everyone knows that they do a yeoman's job in negotiating the best price for the district for each of the resources in their curricular areas. So thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Dr. McNeil. The first book is Krugman's Economics for AP. For all of the courses, we had publishers present options to the teachers, and the teachers reviewed full sets, including student and teacher texts and supplementary materials, to determine what they felt would be the best for each course. They submitted their selections to me, and then I took it forward with negotiating costs with the publishers. The teachers selected for economics the Krugman's text. That and the Ways of the World will both come from VFW, which is the same publisher that we were able to negotiate a very good deal last year with for our AP Psych materials. In terms of the Launchpad Dr. McNeil was speaking of, it's a fully interactive book-specific platform that supports the ebook and allows teachers to assign readings, chapter exercises, documents. It's also integrated with something called Learning Curve, and that's a quizzing engine, something like Kia, I would imagine, or building a quiz through Moodle, which will allow teachers to do formative assessments on an ongoing basis as they go along through the text, and then provide enrichment or remediation as needed. And we thought that that was very important. That was something that was really hands-on for both the students and the teachers that we really wanted to investigate. The third text for human geography came from Pearson, and it is Rubenstein's Cultural Landscape. They basically included extra teacher resources and student test prep workbooks at no cost. So we were able to negotiate a very good deal with them. And we're requesting approval of these resources.
All right, are there any questions? Yes, Ms. Green.
Do those numbers reflect the amount of kids that signed up for each of those courses?
The numbers of materials are very close. We added, I believe, 4 so that we would have a little bit of a wiggle room in the initial order. We felt that 4 to 5 kids might be the bump based on historical trends of how many kids add in after we get the numbers. Because we're working from numbers that are generated in March, and you will find that there is some adjustment all the way up and into the fall. I believe during the first marking period, some kids do still bounce around a little bit. So we added 4 extra, but very close. We cut it very close. We didn't order many extras.
Did all 3 courses
share books, and if we have to order more, we'll order more. But if there were to be a flip-flopping and there's 2 sections in one school and one section in another school, and next year flip-flops,
We're keeping account of the books now that we're able to do that.
we inventory the books.
Thank you.
That's the beauty, Mrs. Bertoni, of having the curriculum leader model, because the curriculum leaders work closely with the building leaders in each building, so they are able to keep inventory and keep touch with the folks right in the building about those kinds of things.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from anyone? All right, board, can we move this forward? All right, and just for, we are being videotaped, so when you speak, please speak into a microphone so the audience out there can hear you as well. All right, the next 2 items involve approving titles for books, and then also the budget amount that goes with that. So I'm going to turn this back over to Dr. McNeil.
Thank you, Mrs. Hurd Simmons. So I, in turn, will turn this over to Ms. Scheib. As you know, we are writing English language arts curriculum, and in connection with that curriculum at the secondary level, we do have titles that we would like to begin using with the new curriculum. And whenever we have new titles, those titles need to be approved by the board directly. So Ms. Scheib is just going to share with us briefly. She did put on the spreadsheet that everyone saw in the combined agenda a summary of the books, the texts that have not yet been approved. So Alana, if you could just briefly go through those. We did ask, or I did ask curriculum leaders if there were objectionable content in the books, if we would be apprised of that objectionable content, and of course we make decisions about the literary merit of texts and their suitability for teaching the skills and strategies that we need to teach to ensure that all our children master the standards at the grade level. So Alana, please.
Thank you. The first 2 books, Roll of Thunder and Tom Sawyer, for the 8th and 7th grade, are the fiction titles that are now the core fiction titles for those 2 grade levels. And so in an effort to get all the kids to be able to have a copy, that's why we need additional text there.
So Alana is going through that spreadsheet rather than the agenda if you're trying to follow along. And can I just emphasize that in the past, those texts had not been read by every student.
Correct.
And our goal in a PA core standard / Common Core world, our challenge and our goal is to have every student exposed to complex text. So these trade books, Roll of Thunder, every 8th grader will read that book. Every 7th grader will read Tom Sawyer. So there is a core book that every student in the grade level will read, and that's very important. I think we have set expectations high for every student at a grade level, not select students read certain books and other students read different books. So I'm very encouraged by this selection and this move at the middle level. And thanks to Ms. Scheib's leadership in that regard.
Thank you. I did indicate that the nonfiction titles in both of those grades are still to be determined because they haven't vetted the collection's text itself to see what nonfiction would make the most sense for teaching the skills and working alongside of that text. So 7th and 8th grade would like the year to figure that out.
Are these considered on grade level books?
You mean Lexile level wise?
Yes, they're part of Appendix B, the addendum to the Common Core Standards document that says these are the books that go along with what we're talking about teaching in the standards.
I'm just looking more at the contextual reading level. Are they considered 8th grade reading level, and what do we do with our students that are higher or lower to that reading?
So Jane, Mrs. Bertoni, where we are with that is that our charge and our challenge, as I said, is to expose all children to complex text. Different children, depending on their reading levels, need more or less support from the teacher. So this is our frame, that a certain student may need more scaffolding support, as we call it, to master that complex text. That doesn't relieve us of our responsibility to expose that child to text. So that's where the teachers, the art of teaching comes in. That we may take a little longer, we may need to infuse some strategies with one child or group of children that we might not need for another group. But that does not mean that we give children less rigorous
I'm
text.
all about raising the bar, that's not my concern, and that's fine, but what about the children on the opposite end of the spectrum who are reading at a higher reading level, and if we're spending, it is the art of teaching, do we have anything in place to reach those children?
So what we see in the new program study for 14-15, the way we've delineated at the high school level, the various levels, is by the amount of independence that the student can exhibit in mastering standards.
So do we have another book available should a student complete the task and need to move on?
Well, another core book, or you mean other?
Or are we, do we have an option, or are we giving teachers the supplies or whatever, the curriculum needed?
But I think the notion of differentiating for children who are excelling isn't more, it's deeper. So you and I could read Tom Sawyer, and if I'm a more proficient or a reader who excels, the teacher may take me deeper into that book than he or she would be able to were I a student who were not as proficient. So it's not about giving the really bright kids more stuff to do. Like, you know, here's another packet for you.
No,
because you're...
I'm not suggesting more stuff, but I just want to make sure that they're challenged. And I guess I don't object. I see your point. Again, I'm not trying to, but I like to know that we have something in the system for all our students, number one. And two, how are we going to evaluate this at the end of the year to know whether we're being successful? Are we going to survey our students? Are we going to survey our teachers? What are we going to do to make sure that we are meeting the challenges and the needs of all our students? So I'm throwing it out there. I'm not trying to stop the bus from moving forward here, but these are questions that I'd like to see us look into.
Well, we've had a goal for differentiating instruction for quite a few years, and we're continuing with that goal in the various things that we do. So differentiating instruction doesn't necessarily mean that I have to give a child another book. It does mean, however, that I have to...
but it also doesn't mean you can't give them another book if that's what you determine will...
Well, I think you have to be careful with that, because you can burn a smart kid out as quickly as a kid who isn't really connected to school by giving them more stuff.
The flip side is you can also lose a child if you're not challenging enough on that.
Well, and that's why our superintendent and our department and the principals have focused on differentiating instruction. That is key, along with another goal that we have, which is common assessment. So you ask, how do we measure success? So we are looking at having common assessments. So I know that if Mrs. Hearn-Simmons is teaching this course and Dr. McNeil is teaching this course, we both have the same targets that we'll measure with a common assessment to see if we are indeed having success with this, this notion of a common core book. Seminole.
My question is, I understand the concept and I like the idea. Are there going to be heterogeneous or homogeneous groupings in order to achieve this, even though it's the same book?
So at the middle level, there are 2 levels of English. And so if we're looking at heterogeneous, the answer to that question would be no, the English classes are not heterogeneous. They are leveled into 2 groups. The English teachers at curriculum writing, and Ms. Scheit can certainly chime in if I'm missing a point, were very eager to talk about what the criteria look like for children moving from 7th grade, let's just make that up, from 7th grade to 8th grade, level 1 versus, I'll call it level 2, on grade level English class. Right now there is criteria, but it's not consistent across teachers or across grade levels. It may be, or across buildings. It may be consistent within an 8th grade at Downingtown Middle School or an 8th grade at Lionville Middle School. But the teachers that were writing curriculum were very eager because they recognize that different teachers put priority on different criteria. So they are going to be working on criteria for what it looks like for a student to be more independent in what they do, a student to be more adept or have demonstrated a greater degree of competency in reading. So they're looking to see, what are those measures that are less subjective, more objective measures. So Alana, was there any other conversation or Deb that I missed about that?
So just to clarify, there are going to be 2 levels.
Correct.
One level would be considered grade level.
Correct.
One level would be considered above grade.
I don't know that that's the terminology that's used. My understanding is it's level 1. Is that correct, principals? I see the principals here. Is that correct? Level 1 and then on grade level?
We've used the term accelerated.
Okay.
In the next item, we have Kindle ebooks, which I believe might be more fun to talk about. The 6th grade center having a one-to-one iPad initiative gives us a fantastic opportunity because they're very willing to pilot ebooks for us and see how that process works and go through the scenario as a whole grade. And then as students progress and carry their iPads with them, as I understand at this moment is still true, then 7th grade and 8th grade will have the same opportunity all the way up through 12. Maybe if we're living the dream, it goes K to 12 one day. I would love that. So Amazon offers this product called Whispercast, which is a free database, and that's how the books get pushed to the individual Kindle device. And the device in this case is an iPad with a Kindle app. So the books allow you to do bookmarking, you can take notes in it, it transfers wherever you log in and have that app, you can get access to that book with your exact same notes, all the joy of learning at no additional cost because Whispercast is free. So with Hoot and Heroes of the Environment, we don't have very many warnings. We have none for Heroes of the Environment, and we have mention of pranks and bullying, but there's no actual bullying witnessed. It's all as if I have been bullied in that sort of conversation rather than they did this horrible thing to me and here's what it was. So it's very unoffensive as a text. The 3rd 6th grade text is for the teachers to use with a connection to what's going on already in this book that they teach called Fever 1793. So there are comparisons available, and that's the very cool part about the text, that it offers the comparative analysis of how this subject is treated in one text versus another. In the next item, Life on Mars, it's a collection of poetry that would be used as a core resource along with Herman Hesse's Siddhartha and Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.